the latest episode of 305 Vox Populi here in the town of Miami Lakes. I'm Mayor Manny Cid. We have an amazing guest today. We have the legend, Rosa Nell Hammer with us. How you doing, Rosa?
Wonderful. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. We're in Rosa's home. She's been very gracious to bring us into her home, so we really appreciate it because she is someone who has seen this community from the beginning into what it is today. But there's a lot of history to Rosa Nell. There's two quick things before we start. A lot of folks don't know that Rosa Nell served our nation as an airplane riveter during World War II. And additionally, another amazing fact, she loves orchids. She's traveled the world all about orchids. But there's an orchid that's named after Rosa Nell. That you go to the store, you buy it, and it's named after Rosa Nell. Those are two quick tidbits to break the ice. But Rosa Nell, going back to 1962, to the first day Miami Lakes was started. No homes had been sold yet, but that first day, can you take us back and let us know what that day felt to you and what was it all about?
Well, it was a fantastic day because they were building a community, not just, it was like a village. And I lived in Hialeah for 15 years, and I was interested in the new homes in Miami Lakes. So I was there opening day, and it was filled with people, and we rode around in a bus over the cow pastures because there were nothing but cows and grass and trees.
Wow. That is amazing. So that first home that you walked into, what was that?
It was over on the first street. I'm trying to think.
That was Lake Candlewood, I think,
yes.
by Lake Patricia.
And they had models. They had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and a pool that I believe you could buy for $13,000.
$13,000, wow.
That was and they had one for $10,000. I believe they start about that. And that was the first area they built. We called it the Lake Patricia area. And then they had the little shopping center, and the office was in where that bank is now. It's changed names. The bank.
Okay, yeah, I know.
You could walk across the street.
Yep, I know exactly where it's at.
Right, you could walk across the street from that bank building now. That was the Graham office, and they had a resale there.
That's where the Vicky Bakery's at today, and okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they also had a realtor there that if you wanted to trade your house from Hialeah to Miami Lakes, you could do that also. They would take your house as your down payment, or the part, they would buy your Hialeah house and sell you a Miami Lakes house. So they've always been into construction, changing that.
That's fascinating. So when folks wanted, you were living in Hialeah.
So what I did there is we had, in Hialeah, we had 581 West 33rd Street that we bought new. We added a left-hand side pool, 17 by 35 with a diving board, 8 feet deep. And I had everything remodeled there. I traded that house for a Miami Lakes townhouse. They gave me $22,000 for that house with everything. And I paid $25,000 for a townhouse on Crooked Bomb. That was my start in Miami Lakes, because I was sold on the community.
Well, that is unbelievable. And starting then in 1962, fast forward to 2022. I mean, you've seen this community grow. So talk to us about all those years of transformation that you've seen Miami Lakes from that first day, you know,
I've
to the
seen
training?
every house that's ever been built here. I used to just go and see everyone. I'd walk construction of each project.
Wow, that is,
And I knew the builder, the work, everybody that worked there. That was what I liked. The other girls would be in the office when I worked for the Graham, but I liked the outdoors. So I did all the communicating with the builders and the workers, the ones that were really doing it, and staying out of the office as much as possible. I did that for 20 years with them.
it's amazing.
And then I retired because they stopped the building and I went into, general real estate.
And you're still working today, 103 years old, and you're still getting
Well, I
calls?
have an active license. Let's put it that way. They want all those lights on, Alan.
But that is fascinating. I'm sure you still get phone calls, folks looking to buy homes, get your opinion, get referrals. I'm sure that happens all the time still.
Well, in my later years, that's what I had, but I never stopped sending out. I did mail outs. I worked with the Allen for 20 years in general real estate, and we sent out 1,000 mail outs every month. And then I believed in going door to door back in the day. Back in the day, we went door to door before cell phones.
Oh, that is
Before cell phone in real estate, you had water and apples, peanut butter in your car, and you went to pay phones. And then you'd go back to the office and the secretary would have your messages. That was before cell phones.
That is amazing. So going back before Miami Lakes, talk about your time as an airplane riveter during World War II. And thank you for serving our country, because we know how hard that was back then. Everybody was participating.
Everybody had to work. So I went to school for a riveter and for blueprints. And then they gave me the job as they saw I could do riveting fast and good, and they gave me with a girl that booked your rivets, behind them. And they found out that we were fast, so they put us on the speed riveting team. And we worked really hard, to keep up with that, because then they paid extra for that. So we worked hard, but they only gave you a 15-minute break, 30 minutes for lunch, or whatever it was, and that was it. And you worked. You didn't stop. It was like, it was a factory.
And it was all part of the war effort.
It was the war effort. And then the war effort, there was no cars. They stopped building cars. I believe the first new car you could buy was 47. We bought a Studebaker, and the only way we got the car, a new car, was I knew the guy that owned the dealership, a Studebaker. So that's what we bought. Then you could get a washing machine, about 47 also, 46, 47, that went back. Before that, if your tire wore out, you just had to put a boot in it. There were no new tires for your car. And there was gas rationing. big time. You could only, the truckers, my father was in the Pulpwood, he had trucks with that. So he would send me one of those T-stamps, we called it, to get enough gas to go visit them. Because I was in South Carolina then, and they were in Mississippi. So gas was rationed, sugar was rationed. There was no butter, there was no bacon, there were no men's shirts. That was one thing.
Wow. So going back to that era, because I had written down a couple questions that I wanted to make sure we asked them all. But going back to that era, what is that one thing that you miss the most that doesn't exist today? Like back then, the music was different, the cars were different, things like. But what's that one thing back 80 years ago that you can say, hey, I wish we still had today, because kids nowadays, they're born and they have, this is like a computer, you know. But what's that one thing that doesn't exist anymore that
well,
you wish you had today?
There was, the only thing I missed the most was the bacon, because I like bacon and groceries and things. But I didn't really let it bother me. I thought it was just what had to be. Because I grew up in a depression, and nothing was as bad as the depression that I went through. I went through the depression for 12 years. And that was the only thing in life that ever bothered me, because when I graduated from high school, I had a scholarship. And it was just tuition, but no room and board. So it was in Memphis, Tennessee. It was a good scholarship. But I couldn't take it because I didn't have a job or no place to live there. So I didn't get to go to college. And so that was the only thing that I ever felt deprived, that I couldn't take. The war effort, that was what we did without, was nothing compared to the Depression. World War II, the people that didn't live in the Depression think that's the worst. But the ones that went through the Depression, we went through what Cuba's going through right now. That's about what we had, nothing, in this country. So, most people, there's not too many people that lived through it. And there were a few that had money, and so then they bought up all the real estate if they had money. But there was very few. There'd be one or two in the town.
Wow. So you've talked to us about two very difficult eras in this country's history, the Great Depression and World War II. So what's your favorite, now you talked to us about two very difficult parts, but what's your favorite era of the last 100 years?
Well, for me, my favorite was my children growing up in Hialeah. Most people won't say that, but I love Hialeah. I live there, and I go back there now. And my son, he loved it. He had so many friends there. It was such a great little town. The only thing there wasn't a word of Spanish. I remember our first Spanish person we met, his name was Jorge. And, I had a problem learning to say their name. And we were so glad to see him. And he was one of my boys' friends. So my son, that went from 4th grade through high school in Hialeah, and he's in Texas now, and he'll be here next week. But anyway, the last time he was here, we literally went through every street there was and there is in Hialeah. And we saw how Seminole changed. We saw how everything changed. And the thing that we couldn't believe is how many fences and bars there were. And we could, to this day, figure out why they wanted those. We thought, that's a waste of money.
And what years were those when you moved to Hialeah?
1955 to, we moved from there in 67.
Wow.
We spent a lot of time in Hialeah. Mylanda was the mayor, and you could walk up to his shop, and if you wanted an inch steak, he'd cut you an inch steak. If you wanted a rib roast, he'd cut you one of those. He was the mayor and the butcher.
Wow.
It was back in the day, and you could walk in his office anytime.
That is fascinating. So you shared with us two difficult eras. You shared with us your favorite era, but what's your favorite childhood memory?
My what?
Your favorite childhood memory when you were a child, 90 years ago. What would you say is your favorite childhood memory?
Before the Depression hit, what happened that was so bad? We had a beautiful home, and my dad was like an engineer with a sawmill. He kept it running all night. They called it a millwright, his job, but it'd be like if it was an engineer here now. Kept the sawmill running. So the timber was getting short. It was getting cut out in Mississippi, Alabama, that area. It's full of timber now because they planted the trees. But it was getting cut out. So he was losing that job. They closed the mill. They closed it down. So he lost his job. So they offered him a job in Longview, Washington, because that was where the timber was going big then, the sawmills. That was the sawmill area. Sawmill, we had a good job, a good living, and I had the tricycle, and I remembered all those little things. But in 1925, when he lost his job, well, we were lucky. He had a farmhouse about 30 miles from there that he had bought. Just, like you just buy something. He just wanted to buy it. And so he bought this, we had the farmhouse and the land that it was on. And so he decided he's going to be a farmer and raise cotton. That was the thing that you did there. That's what most people would do, was a cotton grower. So we moved from this beautiful house and everything that you would have, electricity, all that. The farmhouse was no electric, no running water, and that's what we moved there. And that first year he planted the cotton, I remember him telling me, because I used to work in that. I was the cashier for the cotton pickers when I was like 12 years old, out of a cigar box in the fields. I worked in the fields. That's why I know what they're doing in Homestead. When I see those people in the field, I've been there, so I know what it's like. But anyway, the cotton was 20 cents a pound, and he planted it. You had to buy the fertilizer, you had everything. And he had money, he had saved some money from the sawmill. And so we had money. So he did it the right way and planted all this cotton. And when it was harvested, it sold for 5 cents a pound instead of 20.
Wow.
That was the beginning of the Depression. And I lived that for 12 years.
Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, that must have been
We went
very...
through a long depression. People, they think, oh, it was a big deal here. It hurt a few people. And people think it's something like the Depression, not like the real Depression. The real Depression is like what Cuba is right now.
Unbelievable. So Rosa Nell, I had the opportunity to vote for in my first presidential election in 2004. I graduated high school in 2002, and in 2004 I had the chance to vote in my first presidential election. You've been participating in presidential elections since the late 30s or 40s. So if you don't mind sharing with us, who is from that era, the 30s, 40s until now, who would you say is your favorite president that you were so proud to go in and
Well,
vote for?
Roosevelt. I will never forget him because he really got us out of the Depression. He put people to work. They called it the CCCs. You joined that and they gave you a job. It wasn't the military, it was the CCC. It was a civilian thing. He started that. Roosevelt, to me, was one of the greatest ones we've ever had. And then I liked Reagan. I thought he was a good president. And I think all of them have done well, because if they hadn't, we wouldn't be the country we are. So I really can't badmouth any of them.
No, but I think it's fascinating how, because I didn't live, a lot of us, the majority didn't live in during Roosevelt, but having that perspective is amazing. I mean, for you to
Because see, I don't like to be, I think right now, I think the Republicans and the Democrats have gone a little crazy. They're both doing bad. I don't even know which one is better, to tell you the truth. But I'll vote independent anyway. I'll vote who I like, But right now, I can't say anything good for either one.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing, because listen, out of everybody, you have the best perspective, living during the Great Depression, during World War II, I mean, just all Vietnam War, all those different eras, and sharing that story. So one thing that we do that's interesting, and they're going to ask you some questions in a second that they got from the students, but one real quick one. Folks at home, if they want to buy or find the orchid that's named after you, if you could share with us that story and where we can find the orchid. It's a hybrid orchid.
Well,
That's named after.
Bob Fuchs, RF Orchids in Homestead, is the one that bred it and named it for me. And he sometimes has it for sale. He had some for sale last year, I think, and he may have it.
Oh, you heard that. We got to go buy
But it's
the Rosa Nell Hammer orchid down in Homestead.
But it's RF Orchid in Homestead, and the name of it is BLC Nell Hammer.
Wow. BLC Nell Hammer.
And that's registered in Kew Gardens in England.
In the official registry for orchids. Wow.
When you have one name for you, that's like that.
That is unbelievable. That is
But he's the
unbelievable.
one did it for me. And he's a world orchid judge. He goes all over the world judging orchids. He's working every day. And he has if you've never been there, it's a beautiful place to go on a Saturday or Sunday. If you're off, just take a ride to Homestead. It's and it's changing fast, but I've loved Homestead ever since I've been here because it reminded me of my growing up, the fields, you know.
Unbelievable. That is.
And I still like to ride around down there. I went to, you know, that place, if you want to see piles of fruit, is, what's the name of that guy? Is down there in the Redlands.
I think there's one. I think there was like one called Robert is here and a couple. Other
Yeah,
places.
yeah,
Okay.
Robert's here.
Yeah.
All right, I know him. I just gave his book away. I had it. I just finished reading it. He gave it to me when I was down there. Alan has taken me there a couple of times. And so Robert is here.
Robert is here. That's fascinating. So
He
Eric.
started his story. Have you heard his story? His story is they were farmers like I was growing up. And he was like, I think 6 years old, 8 years, somewhere like that. And they gave him a bushel of cucumbers to sell on the street, because that's what they were growing, his parents. So he didn't sell them, you know, he didn't sell them. And they wondered what was wrong, you know. And so the next day, they sent him back to the same spot, and that's where he is now. Down there, he finally, after 20 years, they sold him the land. First they were leasing it, the spot, you know, but he became so famous. He's made lots of money there now. So he's got 60 employees now. And they started with his mom and dad and him. But anyway, he went back the next day and he said, Robert is here, a big sign, and put it on that corner. So people started stopping, and he sold every cucumber. So that's the story of that.
That is fascinating. So thank you for sharing that.
And if you want a good milkshake, strawberry, May, whatever, go there and get.
It's good stuff.
They line up for the milkshakes.
That is true.
And maybe now in the book, maybe they sell 1,000 a day sometime.
They
Wow.
When they sold 5 a day in the beginning.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
And they tried to buy, and so I walked up to him with Alan, and I said to him, you know, I just want to thank you for not selling your stand to the developers, because it just sold in front of him, and they're going to build all apartments. And you know, the thing we're killing Florida with is apartments, rental apartments. Well, it's a money-making thing, so what can I say? People do it for money, and we need a place for people to live. So that's what's happening. But if you take a look around, most of your building, unless it's $500,000, is a rental apartment.
Wow, wow, wow. You know, one of the things that they have lined up for you is that the students and then they have some questions they want to ask you. If it's okay with you, I know Ariel and Albert had a couple. If you want to join us, join.
Here it was.
You got some questions too?
Well, the students wanted to know, and imagine you've lived 100 years already. So, what is your takeaway from 100 years of life? Why do you think it's more important to be happy in life?
I think what makes anybody happy is you have to do what you want to do. If that's possible. There are people that work every day, they're waiting on tables, they're washing dishes, they don't have another choice because of their education. Now we have the best time in this country because you could get an education. More people could get an education. You know, that makes you happy to do what you want to do.
To follow your passion.
But, see, I like the outdoors, and I like plants, and I like animals, so maybe I'm different. I can make myself happy, just walk, I can walk to the front door if I get sad. I walk to the, go outside, look at those flags, that makes me happy. From 9/11, I think we came a long way, and we didn't forget those people. And then I could walk back here and I'll see a turtle or a fish or a plant getting a bud or something. And I sit out there and I can sit out there for 2 or 3 hours.
That's
And I'm
beautiful.
happy.
That's beautiful.
But the only thing that bothers me now is I have the walker, and who's wants to buy a house from somebody with a walker? You know, I can't walk construction, I can't, but that's part of aging. I'm blessed that I don't have Alzheimer's.
Right.
I think every day I say I'm blessed because I have so many friends I've lost.
I know.
With
I can only imagine.
So we all have something that we're blessed for.
Absolutely.
And I'm
Absolutely.
really blessed. And people come almost every day and bring something to me. The guy the other day brought me a big pineapple, a papaya. Girl cut it up, and my neighbor cut the pineapple up. And they have on Main Street now on Saturday.
Yep, farmer's market.
And he brought me the biggest avocado, one of those long ones. And somebody's bringing me something all the time.
That's amazing.
That's great.
Rolando. You got anything?
You know, that's, Mama Lakes is such a friendly place,
It is. It
you
is.
know. But,
And you've seen it all. You saw it since it began.
yeah, I was one of the first ones, I think, in the garden club. And we used to meet in the Congregational Church. And I was the first person in Miami Lakes that was robbed.
So the first at everything.
I was walking in my 100 years, I was walking from Crooked Palm to the church, to the garden club meeting. And I had this big bag because I had some money in it for the Boy Scouts I was collecting, and I had a bunch of stuff in it. So anyway, this kid on the bicycle, I heard him and so coming up behind me. So I stepped off on the grass, which was a blessing because he kicked me in the ribs and made sure I was down and got my bag and took off across the street.
Wow.
And they think that it was a bunch of kids that the parents had moved away and left them on Harris Place on that lake there. And so the policeman, I just went to the first house because I knew who lived there, Jack Welp. So I went to him and told him what happened, and he called the police. But I told him, I said, I don't want to miss the garden club meeting. So, the kid took all my money. So I said, lend me a couple of dollars for the raffle for the garden club, and I'm going back there.
Right.
And so I did. And
So you went on. You didn't
anyway,
let it
the
stop you.
police guy, he brought people to look at, but you know what? I had 2 boys myself. I could not make myself. I knew that this kid was the one, really, but I wouldn't say it because I thought that's gonna mess him up for life. You know, but the policeman told me I was the first person to be, you're the first one to be.
Hey, a lot of firsts for you then.
Well, when you live hundreds you'll have a lot of fur.
That's a blessing of its own.
Yeah,
103. Anything else?
103.
You guys got?
Yeah,
exactly.
I was gonna ask you, you've lived in many places around the world, around the country. So why did you decide to settle down here in South Florida?
Wait a minute, I didn't get that.
Why did you decide to settle in South Florida after you visited so many places in the world? Why South Florida?
Okay, when my husband retired from the Air Force then, so we could go anywhere, and I was working real estate. So we, one day we sat down, and I said, you know, I haven't ever lived anywhere that I like better than here. I said, I don't like cold weather. When I was working as a riveter, I fell down in the snow trying to, because the streetcar couldn't get up the hill, and I had to walk home 11 o'clock at night. And I fell down, and I saw that I was skinned up all across. And I saw that red blood on that white snow. I said, Lord, let me get out of here. When this job is over, I'm never coming back to Ohio. And I haven't except to visit. Because I don't like cold weather. So that puts out a lot of blessings. You know,
Yeah, pretty much everywhere up north.
it puts out everywhere except Florida. And then my husband was stationed at Tyndall Field. That's Panama City, Florida. So we were there 5 years. So we had a chance to check that out, everything. Well, it was beautiful, but it got cold too. It gets pretty cold in the wintertime.
Right.
And the water was nice, and we did some boating and all that. And then we left from there, we went to Texas, then San Antonio. Well, I fainted at the Alamo, and I thought I was dying, went to the doctor, and he said, oh, you came from Panama City, which was, you know, breezy over the water, you know, and came to San Antonio. Honey, it is hot. I mean hot. We don't know what hot is here. And if you go to Singapore, it's worse.
Wow.
I almost fainted there. I had to sit on the air-conditioned bus while the others. And so anyway, we took all these things and thought about it. I said, there's no place better than right here.
And you just knew that Hialeah and Miami Lakes was the one for you.
Yeah, that was me. Well, I liked Homestead, and I probably would have maybe settled there, but maybe not. But anyway, I love the farms and the way it used to be, you know. Well, now it's not anymore farm for money like now. Homesteads turn into plants for, like, you know, pot plants
Right.
for indoor house, and they ship them all over everywhere. Those people are making lots of money.
That's amazing. So Rosa Nell, in closing, because we got about 2-3 minutes left in the program, any questions you have for me or anything? Because we kind of do it different, but if not, if you don't have any, I don't know if you do have any questions that you got for me, because we kind of turn it around. Now you become.
Well, I don't really have any questions anywhere, because this is where I want to be the rest of my life, as Miami Lakes, just like it is. And I think it's wonderful. It has everything that small town has.
That's
And we even, my husband and I, when he retired, we took a week and we went to every place in Florida. We crisscrossed it up and down. And it was, I liked the Sarasota, Venice area there a little bit. And I had friends that lived on Marco Island, and we went there a lot with the boating. We was into boating with them. And He's still, well, he passed away, but I think the place is still there, stands in Goodland. So anyway, but we decided this was the best.
So Rosa Nell, if you could look at that camera right there, if you, or whichever camera you feel
This
more
one.
comfortable, if you could look at this camera and give in your final closing of the program, tell the kids at home some inspiration. Rosa Nell Hammer, inspirational, motivational words of everything you've learned in your 103 years of life and many more years to come. But if you can share with them some final words, some words in the program of inspiration.
Well, I think there's no better small town in the United States than Miami Lakes. There's a few other towns that were built with a master plan for so many trees, for so many houses, and we're one of those small towns. And we have beautiful weather here. We have good, now that we're a city, we have a good system. We have the mayor, we have a police force, we have everything here that small town has to offer, and it's just a beautiful place to live.
And there you have it, the legend, someone who we can all follow as an incredible example in our society, Rosa Nell Hammer. Incredible segment. Thank you, Rosa, and thank you for inviting us into your home. And we'll see you next Wednesday on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.